So here is the Christmas, like the manger scene. Do we have a manger scene? Do we have that? Does he not have that, Jim? Should have stepped in one other place, I guess. He's not even sick. He's home in bed, maybe watching this online, Jackson. So imagine with me the Christmas story, the scene. We have there the typical Christmas scene, this beautiful picture that I picked out and I'm looking at right here. See it? Okay. The Christmas nativity story is typically made up of all the people that were there. You know, we've got the shepherds and we've got the star and the angel and all the animals in the barn and the wise men and of course baby Jesus, and that's typically how we see this. And we talked about last week how the shepherds, these unlikely characters in this story, and there's also some other unlikely characters in this story, and this is typically how we portray the scene. When we set up our little nativity scene, we put all those characters up there, but there's some characters that we usually set up on that you typically see in manger scenes. You see it all over the place that are pretty unlikely characters also, and they weren't actually at the manger scene. It was the three wise men, known as the Magi. So it's pretty interesting that they're here, that they get included. They're still included with our little manger sets 2,000 years later, and they're pretty unlikely characters, but different than the shepherds for a whole other reason, okay? So we're going to look at that today. Let's jump into this super long scripture. It says, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem, in the territory of Judea, during the rule of King Herod, Magi came from the east to Jerusalem, and they asked, where is this newborn king of the Jews? We've seen his star in the east, and we've come to honor him. When King Herod heard this, he was troubled, and everyone in Jerusalem was troubled with him. He gathered all the chief priests and the legal experts and asked them where the Christ was to be born. And they said, in Bethlehem of Judea. For this is what the prophet wrote. You, Bethlehem, land of Judea, by no means are you the least among the rulers of Judea, because from you will come one who governs, who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod secretly called for the Magi, found out from them the time when the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go and search carefully for the child. And when you found him, report back to me so that I may go and honor him. And when they heard the king, they went, they looked, and the star that they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stood over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with Mary and his mother. Falling to their knees, they honored him. Everybody say they honored him. They honored him. Then they opened their treasure chest and they presented presents with gold and frankincense and myrrh. Because they were warned in a dream not to return to King Herod, they went back to their own country. And it goes on a little bit more that when King Herod knew that the Magi had fooled him, he was very angry. He sent his soldiers to kill all the children in Bethlehem and all the surrounding territories who were 2 years old and younger, according to the time that he had learned from the Magi. So we know the Magi weren't there at the birth. For some crazy reason, they're in the story. And they're pretty unlikely characters. These wise men, as we always call them, they're referred to, they were kind of known as occult people. So they were astrologers. They put all their faith and their trust in the stars. They were not godly men, per se, by any standards. And they're right in the middle of the nativity story. It's pretty strange. We just see it as three kings, and they're bringing these presents, and that's why we have presents, right? So, oh yeah, they're part of the Christmas story, and that's where we get presents from, and all that kind of stuff. We're in the third week of this series we're calling Finding Christmas, and the Christmas story is full of all kinds of people who are looking for Jesus, and guess what? They found him, and they recorded it. And what helped these unlikely characters find Jesus, we're still saying what helped them find Jesus then might help us find Jesus in a new way in the Christmas story today. And we're also walking along with the Advent wreath during this. Week one, Brian talked about finding hope. Last week, Larry Leslie Larry. I call her Larry sometimes. Big deal. Leslie shared some good news of peace. And today I get to probably need to find some hope, but I need to find joy in Christmas. That's what I'm going to be doing. Jeez. Okay, don't say anything bad about Heather during this. So here's the good news I get to proclaim today. Nothing can steal our joy more than judging others, categorizing people, drawing lines, and placing our preferences over love. Placing our preferences over love. But we find that joy when we see others through the radical and shocking scope of God's love. That's when we can find the joy of Christmas. Isn't that true? Like some of the most grumpy, joyless people I know are some of the most judgmental people that I know. And I believe there is a one-to-one correlation to go with that. I believe it. So let's look at these gazing occult fellas. Magi, theologians say most likely they were from Babylon. They were among some of the most educated people in the ancient world. They were also specialists in occult wisdom and astrology, which a lot of people thought that gave them the ability to see the future. The Jews, however, were adamantly opposed. Astrology and other occult practices were explicitly and uniformly condemned in Jewish law. So these guys are very unlikely. In addition to the Magi, they were likely consultants of Phraates IV, the Parthian ruler over Babylon. Not a good guy, by the way, not known as a good fella. So the Babylon had become a symbol of the evil empire. So these guys, definitely unlikely, definitely would not be considered. They would be opposed by the Jewish people to say, should these guys be in the story of our newborn king of the Jews? Is that who should be in there? They would have been against it. But one thing we know, God always sees the heart. Everybody say it with me. God always sees the heart. He has this uncanny ability to see through every exterior and see straight to the depth of our soul and our heart. I think it's one of the most beautiful things about God and the way he sees people, and one of the things that's so different about the way we typically see people. Because we're quick to judge by appearances. We're quick to judge by whatever their previous actions were, their history, their story, their family, their beliefs, and we could go on and on and on. Because we're really good about seeing all the outside and placing judgment, and God is really good about seeing straight to the inside. We want to separate people, put lines in boxes, and we definitely have opinions about who gets in and who gets out, about who's included at the Christmas story and who shouldn't be included at the Christmas story. But these guys, what was their motivation? This was likely a 900-mile trek that these guys were going to be coming. Why did they do that? And we typically see them like 3 little camels, and then some wise guys are like, 900-mile trek. You know, it's not like they're just, we'll head up to Farmington on these camels. It's 900 miles. And these guys were wealthy. It was likely like a Christmas parade is what it probably looked like, heading out there, like all kinds of people and things with them. Why would they do that? Well, after Jesus was born, this is what Matthew said in Bethlehem in the territory of Judea during the ruler of King Herod. Magi came from the east to Jerusalem. They asked, where is the newborn king of the Jews? We've seen the star in the east, and we have come to honor him. That's what they came to do. They were in search of this important king that was coming, and their hearts were coming to honor him. We immediately qualify or disqualify people. God immediately sees our heart. You see the difference there, right? We have a lot to learn, a long way to come. It's why when we say we practice how to learn from Jesus, how to love like Jesus and live as Jesus, because we have a lot of practicing to do to get this right, because we often get it wrong too many times. Nothing can steal our joy more than judging others, categorizing people, drawing lines, and placing our preferences over love. If you want a joyless Christmas, choose that way. But we find that joy when we see others through the radical and shocking scope of God's love. So while astrology was problematic, the heart of the Magi was seeking this God, seeking this new king That was their heart. That was their intention. That's what they were doing. And we have to know that sometimes God's working in some ways that maybe we don't see. He's working with things that we don't see. And what often makes this account even stranger, God's inviting these astrologers from the land of darkness, basically, to witness Jesus. And he seems to use astrology to do it. That's just like God. That's what he would do. Because you know what God does? We say this around here all the time. God always meets us where we are. It's almost as if God moved toward them and he used their astrology practices to draw them to Jesus. Isn't that interesting? What we often do, we're people who want other people to immediately conform to our thinking. Almost instantaneously. Like, let me plead my case and then you definitely have to join me, right? We want people to believe what we believe. And how dare somebody have a different opinion or say something against it? You see the contrast where God meets people and how sometimes we meet people. And sometimes we don't even meet people because we're waiting for them to close the gap between them and us. I'm going to say that one more time just in case you missed that. Sometimes we don't even meet people because we're waiting for them to close the gap from them to us. So I don't know if you've studied anything about the Christmas star or anything with astrology. I'm not big into astrology necessarily, but this was pretty interesting. Stars, they kind of repeat themselves. There's things that happen. And now we have this technology to go all the way back and to see what took place in history. It's pretty interesting. I've watched several things on this. But there was a lot of astronomical events that took place between 12 BC and 5 AD. A number of these were happening at the same time. And from the Babylonian astrologers' perspective, they would have said, something is getting ready to happen. And by what they would predict, there was a very important person that's going to be born in Judea. So these magi used astrology to find the king. So it's almost like God met them there. It's almost like God stooped as far as necessary to meet them where they were, to help them come and seek and see Jesus. So in reality, the stars didn't predict the future. They didn't direct anything. God just used it to help these guys to draw them in. And if you want to embrace joy and offer joy at Christmas with others, I think we need to follow the example. Christmas story is shocking. It's sweet and cute until you dive into it. You're like, man, there's these stinky shepherds there. What were they doing there? They got invited. They weren't the last ones. There's these occult people that were from some other country that was like godless country. Like, these are cruel country people. Like, they're working with the bad guys and they're invited to the story. What in the world? So we look at the Christmas story. Do we just stand back and look at it and go, oh, that's cute? Or do we actually follow God in this radical, unjudgmental love that he had in this story? Or do we just want to go out and set people straight? God, just give me permission. I'll tell them how it is. Instead, we meet people where they are. We don't ask them immediately to think differently, to jump through a bunch of hoops. We love them. And yes, we hope people eventually think differently. Yes, I hope people end up turning in and loving God and trusting them with their life. I think it's the best life that he has to offer. It's just not a prerequisite of whether I love somebody or not. And it's not even the purpose as why I love them. That hopefully they're going to get to that. And if they don't, oh my gosh, all my love was for nothing. Listen, nothing can steal our joy more than judging others, categorizing people, drawing lines, and placing our preferences over love. But we find that joy when we see others through the radical and shocking scope of God's love. And lastly, and I think maybe the biggest takeaway of all this, is God always loves above everything. Everybody say God always loves. He always loves. It's like, it would be really good for us to get up every morning and just look in the mirror and say that. He always loves. Above everything, he always loves. And when we understand the shocking story of the Magi, and when we truly lean in and we see the great lengths that God goes to love others and include others who might be on the outside, I think we can see something really beautiful about that story. So these guys would have been excluded. He sees their hearts. He loves them. He includes them. They're written down in this story. Why Matthew would include them in this story, that blows my mind too. But he wrote it down. He captured this. He even uses a crazy dream. to draw them back another way. He meets them where they are. And if we accept that God is love and that he cares about people more than we do, then what we do is we just lean in and we try to follow his example in that. What does it look like to do that? I know this. It's a heck of a lot easier to do it when a person's sick in the hospital. It's really easy to do it when it's my neighbor that I get along with. I can love the heck out of them. It's easier to do when it's someone that has similar views than me. They have the same views. Man, I can sit down, I can love on them. We can have the best coffee conversations. It's so much more difficult when it's people that are different than me, that think different than me, that believe different than me, that live different than me. So what does it look like? To love above our preferences, above all else. It's understanding that God loves them. It's knowing he's already at work. And it's whoever I sit across from is included in the Christmas story just as much as you and me. Is included in the story of God just as much as you and me. Regardless of preference, regardless of thought, regardless of life, everyone is included in. And we shouldn't be afraid to love like this scandalous way. God loved in a way that he didn't care if he's called astrology-loving person. And we shouldn't be afraid of how scandalous and shocking love may appear to other people if it helps us love someone right where they are, just like Jesus. Love God, love others as we love ourselves. Those are the words of Jesus, the greatest of the great commandment. Nothing can steal our joy more than judging others, categorizing people, drawing lines, and placing our preferences over love. But we find that joy when we see others through the radical and shocking scope of his love. A really close friend of mine was going through a really difficult period of time. And I kind of felt like this story, kind of like seeing God working in some ways, knowing he's working in somebody's life, trusting that he's working in that way, and just looking for it, and just allowing God to work in my life through his life. And so he's going through really difficult stuff. He knows I'm a follower, but he's trusting me and having conversations with me. And I'm not telling him all the stuff he should or shouldn't be doing. I'm mainly listening because everybody else has told him what he should and shouldn't do, and he cut about everybody else out of his life. So not a good idea on his part. However, that was how he was kind of walking through this stuff. And as I'm listening over the course of months, he starts telling me about how he's talking to God and what he's saying to God and what God might be saying to him. And I was tempted a little bit to, all of a sudden now step in and be like, okay, well, here's what you need to do. Like, he put the God conversation on the table. And a lot of times when that happens, we just want to jump in and bring all of our previous God conversations to the table and tell somebody how they should live or what this should look like. And I really felt the Spirit's prompting of like, just sit and listen. I'm working in his life. Like, he's telling me about his conversations with God. He's also got all these life habits, and I'm like, none of this is helping you, but I didn't work on those. I just listened to his God conversations. And he wasn't asking me like what I thought or what should I do next or any of those things. So I just took moments to encourage him, validate, keep talking to God because he's there. He's listening to you. If you feel like he's saying something to you and you want to run that by me, I'll be glad to listen, but God's talking to you. And just encouraging him to keep that conversation going and to see what God's up to in his life. And on one hand, that felt a little like I left a lot on the table because I'm supposed to guide someone to learn and love like Jesus. But what I was doing was just trying to start it. Notice God at work in your life and see what he's saying. And I can help you discern a little bit of that and just create some choices to say, which one of those do you want to do? Sounds like that's what you should do, dude. Just do it. And it was really cool for me to step back and to see this working in his life. And oddly enough, the guy is going to church right now, which is strange. It's good, and it's not the end all. It's not like, oh, now he's going to church. Oh, thank God, now he's good. That's not the point. The point isn't let's go to church. The point is continue this conversation with God. And I see this kind of stuff show up all the time. I see this in his relationship with his son. I see this in his relationship with me and his relationship with my boys. And it's just really cool to step back and see that. And for me, I feel like I'm experiencing joy because I'm allowing God to work in ways that maybe I don't even understand, believe that he's at work there, and trust that this guy is leaning into that work and that I get to love him above everything else, all my preferences, all my thoughts, all my opinions, whatever that might be, and just know God's at work. And it's really awesome to see that take place. So for you and me, are we too quick to judge others? This time of the year, we run on a little margin. When I run on a little margin, I'm a pretty good judge. When I run on a little bit of margin, I snap a little too quickly. So as we head into the holidays, are you too quick to judge others and their ability maybe to connect with God? Are you allowing your views, your thoughts, your preferences to take precedent over just loving and being present with people? What are we doing there? Because nothing can steal our joy more than judging others, categorizing people, drawing lines, and placing our preferences over love. But we find that joy when we see others through the radical and shocking scope of God's love. And I have a feeling over the holidays, we're going to get a lot of opportunities to practice this. Imagine every single person that you come in contact with feels seen, heard, welcome, included, valued. What would that do? Like every person comes in contact with you like, man, I'm sure glad I ran into Jerry today. Man, sure glad I ran into Cassie today. Man, I just feel different. I don't even know why. Oh, because I ran into Derek. You know what? That made me feel so good, what he had to say. How do we do that? Intentionally. We choose it. What do I want more? Experience the joy in my own life, and I want others to experience that same joy. We start every day with intention. We enter every place we go to with intention. We enter on conversations with intention. We have encounters and the opportunity with intention to bring joy to others. And we do it by taking our preferences and places and putting them aside and making eye contact with the person in front of us and giving them a quick word of encouragement. Tell them thank you for what they're doing. Find an opportunity that you might see God at work in their lives, and you just get to join in there, and you just get to take the joy of Christmas and you just get to allow that to spread to other people intentionally every single day. And I'll promise you that if you include others, search for God at work and surrender to it and love others, the joy will follow. Not just in your heart, it's the joy that will flow to others. It's never just about us, but it is about us. We get included in this. So, as I light this candle of joy, just kidding. Brian told me, you remember it's the pink one. I'm like, I remember. Oh, goodness. So as I light this candle of joy, I want us to do it as an act of surrender. The Advent candles, I love these symbolic things because they're representative. They help us remind us of things. It's what I love about when we get to take communion. It's the remembrance of this. Jesus says, remember this. Why? When we remember it, we can see it, we can know it, we can choose it, we can actually embody it. And as I light this, we're going to do it in this act of surrender. And this is kind of my prayer for us. May we walk out of here seeing others through the lens of God, of your radical and shocking love. And may we embrace the joy of Christmas and embody that joy in the places that we go and the people that we encounter. May the joy fill our souls and overflow to others. And everybody says, amen.